Okay, so hello everybody. We are recording and we're starting our Fundamentals of Ally workshop today. So it's Halloween, so happy Halloween to everyone. I don't know if anybody remembers that song Every Day is Halloween. It was one of my favorites in the 80s. It kind of described my life back then and sometimes still today. So because it's Halloween, I can't, and you all know how I am with music. I had to do a little something. Now, this is not the entire video. It is the shortened version. So it's only about 3 minutes. If you remember the entire video, I think it's 18 minutes. It's a movie. It's like a little movie. But I'm not going nowhere with him at this point. So I hope you all enjoyed a little Thriller, a little Michael Jackson. So, but what
Always.
always, how can you not love Michael? So what we're doing here today is an ally workshop. It's really a shortened version, so I'm just sticking to the fundamentals because as you'll discover, aspiring allyship is really a journey. So this is our agenda today. We're gonna go through a few things, one of which is our antitrust guidelines. Always have to talk about this in this council. There is the possibility of competitors in the room. So what we're here to talk about is diversity, equity, inclusion, and the promotion of those things within our industry in automotive. What we're not doing is selling to anybody. So, those are the basics, and all council members have a copy of that. These are our council members. So I'm excited that this council is still going. April will start the third year of the council. So we're in the second year, and the council has certainly evolved, right? And it is a growing living thing, and as you'll see, it changes. And I'd love to welcome any guests. Robert, especially, I don't know you. The other people who are in the room, I know. I'm super happy that you're here. The council itself, why the council started. And really, I got the idea to start the council because I got tired of talking about these three things. These three things that we have been talking about in our industry continuously, our inability to attract emerging talent, finding talent. It's always something that people are talking about. Our consistently high turnover and the gender gap and the minority ownership gap. These things, and I put those gaps together. We just continually talk about them. And in my journey, what I realized was like, holy schmoly, we're talking about the symptom. We're not talking about the real wound. So what I've come to believe is the real wound is inclusion, is our lack of it, our inability to have embraced what inclusion means, right? And I'm not saying that we shouldn't um, do the things that we all talk about, to attract talent, stop turnover, and shorten those gaps. But you can just look at the gender gap. That seems to be the most palatable for people. We've been at 20% women in this industry since I can remember, and I've been here since 1998. So as a member of the council, you get to participate in things like this, and participate in a way where you can present your research. And we'll have, for example, CDK coming up. I'm working with them. They've just done a big study and they're going to present this study through the council. We're hopeful to do other research of our own, in particular, like this talent acquisition study that I'd love to do. So you have those opportunities individually, and this is one way that the council is changing, right? With the council, I come up with ideas, we run things by, and we tweak them. So we've come up with some different levels of membership. So I'm going to show you those real quick. But part of the reason is because we need a collective voice. Together we're stronger. And so the first level of membership is gold membership. There's one for nonprofit and there's one for corporate. Now that gives you 2 seats, opportunities to co-chair on the council, present, gives you a decision making, and opportunities to present your own research. There's also some other levels. There's a corporate level that's 1 seat, nonprofit that's 1 seat. And also I decided to do an individual membership because maybe somebody is they want to do something with the council. And so we decided to do that too. So honestly, in November, after November 5th, there will be some things going out. So, if you'd like to join the council, it's like a form that I do it. I use Google Forms. So let's move into the content for today, and I'm gonna watch the clock. And before I start, I always like to give credit where credit is due, right? I continue to do a lot of learning. For this presentation, a lot of the things that I have learned and that I utilize come from, in particular, these 3 places. Frame Shift Consulting. They do a train the trainer, which actually one of the handouts that I sent to you comes from that. It's derived from that. I modified it. Also, Next Pivot Point. Julie Kranz, you might follow her. She's really big on LinkedIn. She has a newsletter called Lead Like an Ally that is pretty great. And of course, Cadia, the Center for Automotive Diversity. And if you don't know Cadia, please check them out. They have they've been a good friend to this council. I'm looking forward to seeing Cheryl actually on Monday. We're both going to be at SEMA. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing her on Monday. Cadia has this accelerator program. So if you're in your organization, if there's someone who you'd like to prepare to do some diversity, equity, and inclusion work within your organization, this would be a great place to send them. It's a 13-week course. I have taken it myself, and it's pretty awesome. It gives a greater understanding. There's a lot of resources as well through Cadia. So guidelines for this space. One, nobody knows everything. So give yourself grace if you don't know, and give others grace. Whenever I do a workshop or a class or a session, anything like this, I always ask everyone to assume good intention, right? I don't know. And also I should probably put in here too, to remember that impact trumps intention. And if you share, speak from your experience, avoid generalizations, speak in first person using I statements. Get ready to be uncomfortable. Sometimes this work, not sometimes, all the time, this work is uncomfortable. And if you don't know, but I would tell one time, the only silly question is the question I don't ask. So the goals for this workshop are we're going to give some definitions, identify sources of personal power and privilege. Hopefully you will be able to define what allyship looks like for you and create a plan for your allyship journey. So I've given you some worksheets. So in a few minutes, I will unshare and I'll put those worksheets again in the chat so that you can grab them. But first, let's go to some definitions, right? Allyship. So allyship is a active, consistent practice of using your power and privilege to achieve equity, inclusion, and justice while holding ourselves accountable to marginalized people's needs. So the words in here that are really important to me, one, always try and remember, ally begins with A, and that is for action. And it's something that I have to practice. I have to remember. Another one of the, it's not part of this workshop, but it's just an article that I love. And it's pretty old, actually. I found it years ago. But I continually go back to it. It's from Cornell Health. It's called Ally Up, Practicing Effective Allyship. It's got a lot of great stuff in there to remember, if you are an aspiring ally. Accountability is another word that in here that is really important. So what are some examples of allyship? Black Lives Matter. At work, using your pronouns, or using someone else's preferred pronouns can be a show of allyship. We have some organizations in our industry, like Women in Automotive. So an example of allyship in Women in Automotive would be somebody who's not a woman in automotive who is volunteering. They're cleaning up. They're doing something for women in automotive. Another organization in our industry is WOCAN, Women of Color Automotive Network. Some of you know that I'm the ally chair for WOCAN. I feel like this council is a show of is one action that people can take to learn, because learning, as you'll see, is one of the core fundamentals of aspiring allyship. In the ally continuum, which I'll show you, there's another word that I'd like to define for you, and that is accomplice, because this is really kind of like another level. So accomplices really challenge the system. So I have friends who they're like, I'm not going to change the world. I'm not going to change the system. And that's awesome. Wherever anyone is in the road is perfect for them, right? I want to try and change the system, which is why I started the council. So it is accomplicehood, I guess, is about justice. It focuses on equity. And sometimes rules and laws got to be broken to achieve that equity. Accomplices, when I first wrote this, I put in this, are unafraid to pay the cost. And then I thought, no, that's not it at all. Accomplices are willing to pay the cost. There's definitely some fear, right? Because being an accomplice comes with some risk of loss. And here is an example, probably that everybody could come up with on their own, an example of accomplicehood in the civil rights movement. The people who are not people of color certainly took a risk in doing this. More recently, Netflix, when there was a walkout to protest Dave Chappelle's special, because they felt that it promoted bigotry against the trans community. So ally and accomplice, this is something that is really important, right? Ally is not a hat that you put on. It's not a label. It's not something that you call yourself. Instead, it is something that a group or a community that I'm not a part of calls me. So if you've ever had that happen, you will have a feeling that, quite frankly, I don't know how to describe it in words. And I always try and look at allyship as an aspiration. I'm an aspiring ally, and I'll never be done learning. I'll never be perfect. However, there are some, there's some things, some guidelines, right? One is kind of these 4 stages that move from being, you're not really paying attention at all, people aren't really paying attention, to becoming aware and saying, the best example I think I can give right now is in May of 2020, when George Floyd was murdered. I think a lot of people became aware, woke up, right? And wanted to do something. And then you learn that it's not just about words, right? And you move into active allyship. And in this, in doing this, I make mistakes. I make mistakes, and I could talk about those mistakes. I won't, but I've learned so much, and I continue to learn. So, and then moving into accomplishhood. I like this new word I've coined. I don't know if it's out there in the world. So I would like to share a little bit with you about my particular journey. Because everybody has their own, right? And as I have uh, continued to learn, as I really started to learn, I came to realize that there were a lot of things that prepared me for this work, that I was unaware that were going to prepare me for this work. The first photo I want to show you are of the loves in my life, the big loves, and my partner Abel, who is Afro-Cuban, and my daughter Ariana. She is Puerto Rican. Her dad's Puerto Rican. And this is my younger brother Sam. He's 2 years younger than me. This picture is from the 80s, and I'm sure I was 3 sheets to the wind. This is a little bit more recent picture. It was about, 25 years later, maybe. It's one of my favorite pictures of he and I. And what I've come to realize is that relationships are so important to my allyship journey, right? And through Sam, I have a particular affinity for the LGBTQ plus community. Always have, actually, before Sam came out. Um, and and this is like a short version of my life and the things that kind of happened to me to prepare me and the people in my life. Then I had my little girl. I love this picture of her. This was at work because I took her to work when she was that little. Um, and you know, just thinking about that, and then about 20 years later, a lot of you know that I feel like I discovered Latin dancing. Of course, salsa, merengue, and bachata was around long before me. But about 20 years ago, I discovered it, and I met these two people, right? Miriam and Carmen. They are my two closest friends today. They're my besties. Miriam is Venezuelan, Carmen is Mexican. And this opened, like, my world just kept opening, right? Is how my life went to unknowingly prepare me. And maybe as you look back on your life, there are some things, because proximity, one of the things I've learned is proximity is super important. And there is an exercise that sometimes people do where you look at who are the 5 closest people in your world. Do they look like you're the same religion as you? Is everything the same, right? And if it is, you might want to think about building authentic relationships outside of your circle, because the fact is, when I really started learning and I looked at all this started happening when I was about 18, right? Like me getting out into the world, or 17. And because growing up, I grew up, went to church with, went to school with people that believed the same things I believed, that I grew up believing, the same religion, this looked like me, right? So expanding and having more people in my circle really helped to prepare me. And I didn't really realize this. So that's a more recent picture. And so I became enmeshed in the Latin community, right? And in particular, as I was saying, you might have an affinity for certain groups. Like for me, it's LGBTQ plus, the Latin community, and the Black and African American community, and women, right? So in the Latin community, Cubans, I just got back from Cuba. Cuban culture, Cuban religion, all these things are super important to me. And every culture has its idiosyncrasies, whether it is international or closer to home. So, but my journey into really learning about allyship started much more with this young lady. This is Ariana now. This is her today. Well, this was in May on her 21st birthday. And in May of 2020, I made Ariana a promise. During that time, a lot of people woke up, and one of the things that Ariana and I did is we did some learning together, and we were watching a movie called 13th. And if you're interested in learning a little something about the African American Black experience in this country, I highly recommend it. You can find it on YouTube, you can find it on Netflix. But as the credits were running, and the thing I like about this movie is that it shows both sides. One of the things I like about it. As the credits were running and the tears were coming down my face because there were so many things in this that I did not know, at the time she was 16, looked at me and said, "Mom, you need to find a way to use your privilege to carve a path for unheard voices." And I promised her that I would. And that really started this journey, right? Like everything I've done in the last years, almost 5 years, has been an attempt to keep my promise to her. So some of the things that I did is I knew I wasn't prepared. I've been an HR professional for a very long time. So I knew I wasn't prepared, but I took a course. It's a 3-month course to become a DEI practitioner. I also joined WOCAN, and I started this council. So there are a lot of things that I've done and I continue to do, right? Because I got to remember that this is a journey. Right. So, and that's what we're here to talk about allyship, not about, I, I think that things are personal. And so I wanted to share a little bit about my story, in hopes that you can create your own. Right. And so, but to focus more on allyship, right, and what it is. Some things to remember is that it definitely requires action. It is centered around understanding your power and privilege. This is super important. And understanding the needs of the communities that we feel like we want to help, right? I come to understand that it's not about help. It's not about it's not a savior thing. It is about creating access and opportunity using power and privilege, right? And it is something that needs to be practiced. Some things that it is not, that allyship is not. I already talked about this. It's not a hat that you put on. It's action. It's not passive. For some people, it can be on the passive side. Like if somebody feels safe enough only to donate, right, to a 503c. But both of the organizations that I mentioned, Women in Automotive and WOCAN, are both 503c's. I'm sure they accept donations, right? If that's the contribution, that's awesome. It's not about saving, right? And it is also not about patting oneself on the back. So there are a bunch of daily practices. You will get these slides. And as I have been on this journey, I've learned to start paying attention sometimes to things that I don't pay attention to all the time. And I've had this happen to me, and I shared this at NADA last year when I was talking. It was a interesting thing because somebody paid attention to me. I'm part of a group. I'm in recovery, right? And I don't really talk about it all that much. However, there are times, for example, at NADA, right? Everybody's partying and carrying on, that I might feel uncomfortable. And there was a moment that it was a happy hour, actually. And there was, she is a chief marketing officer for a big giant company. And I didn't even realize that she knew. And she saw that I didn't have anything in my hand. She said, "Sandy, come on, let's go over to the bar. We've got some non-alcoholic drinks." Right? This blew me away that she recognized, that she paid attention at some point to what was going on around her. So this journey is really about learning, listening to others, experience, others' lived experience. Again, oops, loud. We're just going to focus on the power and privilege right now. So these words, I mean, I know I used to get kind of like, I don't really have privilege. I grew up, I didn't have anything handed to me, right? Um, I didn't have the proverbial silver spoon. I worked really hard for my house. You know, I worked hard. However, these words can make people feel some kind of way. Actually, when I told the story at NADA, I told the same story at what Ariana said to me. And when I said the word privilege, the NADA trainer, because they always have a trainer in the room critiquing you, she heard me say something completely different. Right, and she was kinda feeling one of these way wanna pick a smiley face, but they're not smiling, but pick a face. Um, there's something that I heard that I wanna share, and I heard it years ago, that helped me to think about privilege and power really in a different way. So, because I was thinking about it as perks, like I got something special just because I'm white, cisgender, and straight, and I'm not disabled. But it's not perks. What it is the absence of barriers, right? This really changed things for me. So now we're coming to this power and privilege worksheet. So we were going to do a breakout room, but what I'm going to do is unshare. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I am going to put in the chat if I can find them. Oh, look at that there, right there. Here's the, I'm gonna put all three of the attachments that I sent out this morning. So if you want to grab the second one, the power and privilege one, if you didn't have time to do it, that's perfectly fine, because we have time to take a look at it right now. So actually, maybe I'll pull it up. Would that be helpful if I pulled it up? So, and I can share the screen. And anybody, if we had enough people, I would have put it on, I would have moved us into breakout rooms. So are you seeing right now the power and privilege worksheet?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Thank you so much, Wendy. I'm going to move it over for me a little bit. So, has anybody had any challenges recognizing their own privilege?
I had never heard the term cisgender, but you said that you are, so I guess I am. So yeah.
Yeah,
I
well,
mean, that I didn't know.
cisgender
Same
is
name.
that and that's awesome. And I love questions, Wendy. That's a perfect example of a great question, right? Cisgender is when you identify as the gender that you were given at birth, right? Um, and there are a lot of terms, right? And lately over the years, more and more keep getting added. I know that the first time I did an exercise like this, I realized that I had more sources of privilege and power than I really realized, right? Especially when I remember that that these things are not perks. They're absence of a barrier to certain things. Um, so let's see. Does anybody want to share about some of the things in this? And these are just an idea, and there's some blanks that you can fill in, right? Does anybody want to share about certain some sources that maybe was a surprise to you? Robert, did you unmute to share?
Yeah, I'm unmuted. Um, Sources or a surprise. Um, I'm kind of at the stage where nothing really is a surprise to me at this stage in time.
Uh-huh.
I just to kind of give you a quick background. I'm at SEMA 2 next week, Sandy, and I'm the person who proposed the panel that Cheryl is moderating.
Oh, I'll be
And
there to film it for her.
yeah, she said that you were going to be willing to film it for us since we haven't been able to do that. But I formed a foundation a number of years ago that kind of had to pivot during the course of COVID. And a lot of people think that I pivoted to events to creating scholarships simply because it was easy to do scholarships during the pandemic and it was impossible to do events. But the real kicker was May 26, 2020, when despite the fact that I've been pretty much an advocate for human and civil and racial reconciliation and rights. um, it just kind of dawned on me that being an advocate is okay, Sandy, but at some point in time, we have to move from being an advocate to an activist. And the difference is the advocate may be supportive in comfortable groups. They may be willing to write the check to a group they support, but the activist rolls up their sleeves and gets his hands dirty. And I got to the point where I felt like I really kind of needed to get my hands dirty. So from marches to creating this scholarship fund, what it does is we provide scholarships to female minorities who aspire to be engineers in the motorsports.
Mm.
And when you look, we did that. I mean, last half of my career has been involved with motorsports. First half, other sports and television. As I looked around the industry, um, we there just weren't any. And when I went to our board and I said, we were going to do these scholarships, and we've been talking marginalized for quite some time, and I said, I want to do something really, really hard because until we get to the point where we're willing to tackle the hard, we're pushing the ball up the hill a little bit too slowly. So I said, women in motorsports. Wow, that's a big female minorities and female minorities in engineering. And my board looked at me and I said, "You're not going to get any applicants." We did. We had 20 the first year. We self-funded the first year with $5,000. The second year we got $20,000 from Michael Jordan's race team. The third year we got X number of dollars from GM. The fourth year we got 2X from GM. And to date, we've provided 11 young ladies with 14 scholarships of $5,000 apiece and have created an immersion tour where we bring them to a race weekend, NASCAR race weekend, and we really kind of show them what the opportunity looks like. So that's a little bit of my background. During this whole journey, I've rolled up my sleeves and gotten involved with everything that I can, including taking Katie's accelerator right now. And one of the reasons that I'm on this is that our capstone group's topic is allyship. So
Ah,
really paying attention to a lot of this today. So thank you for allowing me to participate and to say a few words.
well, Robert, I am super happy that you're here and can't wait to meet you on Tuesday.
Yeah.
Um,
And I've got to, we talk about privilege and we've all heard the term white privilege and know that white privilege exists. But I've got one of my very, very best friends that I've built on this for years is a black executive who runs a small business association here in the Southeast. He and I go to church together. We smoke cigars together. We drink bourbon together. We sit on back porches together. And he goes, the problem with you is you haven't realized that you've got nature's passport. And that term really, really lit me up. You know,
Nature's
nature's
passport.
passport. Think about that.
I'm gonna
White,
write that.
white male, white cisgender male.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's opened a lot of doors over the years.
Well, you bring up a point of, without saying the words, access and opportunity,
Yeah,
right? And
absolutely.
when often the word white privilege creates those unsmiling faces feelings that I showed, those icons often, sometimes for white people, right? But I have to remember, and when I keep it in this industry, right? When I went to my first conference, everybody looked like me.
Yeah.
So I didn't, and the first one I went to was women in automotive. So there were a lot of women, you know, and it's so important, right? So Robert, one, I want to thank you for being here and being an accomplice, right?
I'm delighted to do that. Another organization that I think is become really important, which is in your very much in your vein, is Women in Motorsports North America.
Yeah, I'm
Uh,
gonna check this out. I'd love to.
yeah, with Lynn St. James and Beth Coretta, Cindy Sisson, they do a great workshop.
Yeah, I'm
And they do that.
excited about SEMA. It's my first one. But when I first looked at a worksheet like this, it was pretty much very similar. There were things that I didn't, at the time, I didn't really realize, right? And things that have come to me later in life. Like I'm looking at this one right here. I would probably check off connected to powerful people now, right? Like I have Damon Lester on text. I have, there are people that I know um, that I can reach out to that I didn't always, right? And these are sources of power. What I know, the one that surprised me the most was, let's see, when is it? Or maybe I added it. Oh, I'm not a caregiver, right? When my child went to college, I suddenly had some freedoms that other people that I worked with did not have, right? Because they still had to pick kids up after school. Can you go to Atlanta, Sandy? Yep, I can go to Atlanta, right? The freedom that this gave me. So really the whole idea of this, of an exercise like this is for you to take a look at your own power and privilege and where you might be able to find it. Because if you remember, allyship is about figuring out how to use your power and privilege in order to be a true ally to whatever community that you are that you have an affinity for. Like Robert, you're women in motorsports, right? Like I'm WOCAN and women in automotive. I'm also, so this stuff is really super important. So the last part of this little workshop is, and it's also in that in the chat, you'll see the allied journal. So it's really for you because this journey is deeply personal, right? Everybody is going to have their own journey, right? Everybody's not going to have Robert's journey. Everybody's not going to have my journey. Um, Allyship looks different for different people, and it's important that you figure out what it should look like for you. So hopefully the journal will help you do that. And also I gave you some examples in the journal. For example, let me go ahead and share that. Because there's no two journeys in any journey that are the same. So hopefully you'll be able to figure out, well, the first part of it is, just what does this mean to you? Why do you want to be an ally? Remember what you can look at the slides and remember that scale. Where are you on the journey? Are you beginning to learn about different things? Are you just becoming aware and you want to move into active and ally? Or do you want to be an accomplice? right? And how do you get there? So I love journaling. A lot of things come out of the end of my pen sometimes when I'm journaling, that I don't even realize. So I'm hoping that you all do that too. And writing it down, um, for me it has always been very important. And remember, nothing's the same. You don't have to have the same journey as somebody else, but it is about action, right? So then what I would like for you to do is to think about goals, right? And different steps to achieve them. And this is really simple. And this might be an idea for you all, Robert, like to create a deeper one,
Mhm.
uh, of a workbook
Right.
about, yeah, I mean, like I could have gone on and on, but I didn't want to, I wanted to keep this pretty simple, right? Because this workshop is about the fundamentals, right? So it is about beginning. Um, so there's goals, right? So for example, I, and this is one from me that I actually used. I wanted to learn more about the Black and African American experience in this country. So actually, I've taken like 4 different courses with the Racial Equity Institute. It's pretty amazing and deeply eye-opening. They have one that is, and they do them all virtually too, and in person. Um, they have one that's like a 3-hour one, and it's amazing. It's called The Groundwater. And it's just gives a broad overview. And it's pretty interesting. Like sign up for that. Remember, there's that SMART goal thing. Set a time limit on your goal. Make it an achievable goal, and specific, right? Try and make it specific. That's more like a personal one. Robert, when you were talking about activism and allyship, right? Like there are some things, because being an accomplice does come with risk. There are some things that I keep out of the workplace that I do, right? That I keep out of industry. Some things that I don't talk about. And then that rolls into my activism section. And then there's some things where like I don't care. So then they're, at work. Because sometimes people look at these, how to bring allyship into your workplace, right? Which is important. Maybe, and there's a whole entire set of questions that leaders can ask themselves within their workplace, and looking at the data to find out what are the underrepresented communities in your workplace, right? Does your workplace does it look like the area that you operate in? Does it look like the people you serve, right? Especially retail. Um, so this is important. So let's say this is an example of a goal. I have looked at some things, and you know what? We have different communities in the workplace, but nobody really knows anything about the other communities, right? So the goal could be you want to increase awareness of the different cultures that are in your workplace. So you organize a cultural awareness day, right? And people bring food, people bring their dances, people bring their history, right? And learning about others is something that has always for me been super, super eye-opening. So, those are just a couple examples. And I know that everybody can take a look at all of these and can take a look at this and come up with their own goals, right? So, that brings us to the end of this small
I love I love some of what you posted there, because one of the things that we're trying to do and you're probably familiar with the capstone groups that Cadia does. We're trying to develop a toolkit for what
work.
allyship might look like. And so what you've just shown us there, I'm going to share with our group and say, hey, because we're not far enough. We're not very far down the road at all for being halfway through the course, a little behind. That'll be very helpful, I think. So I want to take a look and zero in on a little bit of that and share it if I can.
Yeah, absolutely. I these are yours to do with whatever you want to. You can modify them. I am going to say thank you to everybody. I'm going to stop recording. I'm not going away though. So hang on just a second. I'm just gonna.